Well, thank you, Charles, and welcome to the Abuja Center. As always, my name is Mwabo Njoku. The name never changes. And this morning, I'm going to call out a name that is a mouthful. Just follow me. Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. The name of one organization. Now, what does it do? I don't know. I'll get to be educated presently. And my guest this morning is Dr. Orji Ogbonnaya. Dr. Orji is the Executive Secretary of this mouthful, Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. Dr. Orji, you are welcome to this morning to our program.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. My pleasure. Good morning, Nigerians, and I'm honored to be on Signature TV. Thank you very much.
Now, Dr. Orji, I think I had to breathe in to be able to take this mouthful. NATI for short, Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. What does this organization do?
Well, thank you very much, and once again for having me. And I'm also once again thanking you for your time. The Nigeria Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative is a member of a global organization called Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative. So all we added was Nigeria, EITI. In Ghana is Ghana Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative. In Britain is British Extractive Industry. You add the name of the country. This organization was formed in 2003, and Nigeria joined the same year, but we began to implement its principles in 2004 and became a federal agency that same 2004. It was part of the overall reform program of the then Obasanjo administration under the National Economic Empowerment Strategy economic program being driven by that administration. So NITI was set up, and the law backing up the establishment was enacted in 2007, and we became the first country to also support that implementation with the law. Now, what do? The whole idea of EITI, Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, came about as a result of a study conducted by the World Bank that saw that countries that are blessed with natural resources always find majority of their citizens in poverty, misery, despondency, hopelessness, hunger, and disease. And then most of those countries are also prone to wars and conflicts and insecurity. Most of the symptoms at that time that were very prevalent in Nigeria. And then most of these countries are also countries that emerged from one form of colonialism or the other and are unable to harness properly and manage transparently the resources that God has endowed them. So most of their citizens wallow in poverty, while the very few elites enjoy the benefits of those natural resources. So, and this organization's job was to provide openness and transparency in the way and manner oil, gas, and mining revenues are managed. Nigeria is a member, and there are 57 member countries. So that is what we do. And how do we do our job? It's very simple: to provide information and data on what companies pay to government during a given period, how much of that money did government receive, what did we use the money to do. The whole essence is that when you and I know, if the citizens are aware, they will ask informed questions. And those informed questions will lead to citizens' action. And citizens' action will lead to reforms. And reforms will lead to impact. And the impact will come in form of using that money transparently and accountably to build roads, provide water, provide electricity, provide security, build industries, healthcare, access to education, a socially harmonious society, as is obtained in other climes. So most sub-Saharan African countries bedeviled with what we call resource curse, a situation where the resource abundance in those countries become a curse instead of a blessing. Our members, Nigeria is a member, DRC Congo is a member, Sudan is a member, Ghana is, most countries in West African sub-region, either Anglophone or Francophone or even Portuguese speaking. There are 57 members of countries of the world. And the countries that have used those resources properly are also members, so that there is a peer learning. You learn from those who are behaving well, from those who are behaving badly. And we are in that process together. I'm honored to be the current chief executive secretary, and national coordinator of this initiative in Nigeria.
Now, Dr. Orji, I saw you in the media really, because I wasn't in the Senate. Some 2 or 3 days ago, you were in the Senate. Interfacing with the senators.
That's correct.
Why were you there?
Yes, I was there. That's correct.
Why were you there?
Well, I was there because when we produce these reports, the law provides that we take these reports to the Senate, to the National Assembly. It is the job of the National Assembly to interrogate the contents of that report, and on the basis of their legitimate legislative action of monitoring and oversight, they should use the contents of that report, ask informed questions, and elicit explanation, and then use it now to cause change to happen, to implement the recommendations of that report. After hearing from us, we expect that they will invite all those mentioned in the report for public hearing, and then cause them to ensure that our recommendations are implemented. That's why I was there. They wanted to understand the content and the highlights of the last report we published in 2023. December 2024, we published that report. We are working on 2024 report. It's always a year behind. So they wanted to know, we presented the report, they read it, but they wanted more highlights. They called me to come and defend, explain, enlighten them on what are the contents of that report. That's why I went to the Senate.
Let me take what is your normal responsibility in this transparency initiative when you are working on this, on the oil sector. You look at monies earned, monies not earned. You look at taxes paid, taxes not paid. Do you look at production volumes and whether they are real or not, and what were the highlights of this last report?
Our interventions are in 4 phases. The first is financial audit, which talks about revenue earned, revenue paid not received, or revenue received not paid, or revenues not underpaid or extraordinary. All those issues of revenue, and I looked at with the benchmark of what the financial regime of the sector says. That's one. Then 2, we look at volumes, physical audit, that looked at production, what's the quantity produced, what the quantity exported, quantity reserved for local consumption, are there quantities exported, what is the production arrangement, because there are so many production arrangement within the sector. You have the joint venture cash call, you have the production sharing contract, you have the sole risk, and the marginal fields. So you have to know what are the very funding arrangements. Because when you understand the funding arrangement, then you now understand how the products of that production will be shared. So that's production. Then we also look at the process. What are the processes that you follow during this whole process? Because a process can lead to revenue gain or revenue loss. If the process is flawed, you lose everything. We look at the process. Then we also conduct another report that tracks the revenues that have been shared and received. What did government share of that money? What did government use it to do? Because we represent the people on behalf of the government. We are more like a civil society in government. We look at it, and then that partnership, the multi-stakeholders involved are the government, the civil society, the companies. The companies and government, civil society sit at a table to reconcile who paid what and who reconciled what. And then we publish the report. That's why I went to the Senate to share the findings.
Now, Dr. Orji, how do you get your data? You don't answer me quickly, because I have a worry here. You are not an oil company. You are not a financial institution. You don't track, you don't have the mechanism for drilling oil or following on what companies are drilling and producing. In other words, you work with the figures they give to you. Am I right?
Not correct.
Please
Not very correct.
Educate me.
Now, when we start the whole process begins with procurement to engage independent administrator we call auditors. You advertise and then get the best from around the world. It's international competitive bid. When you get them, you develop what we call suite of templates, which are like questionnaires. Then you organize a workshop between you, the companies that are going to respond, and government agencies. The companies declare their own suite of templates are different, where they have to say, respond to every question related to payments. What did they pay? How did they pay? Who did they pay to? Then the government's angle responds to who received, what I received, what I did not receive. Then the role of the independent administrator sitting with 90 and all this at the validation meeting is to validate this figure. And most times,
and reconcile.
Most times they don't match. Sometimes government receives what is not paid. And sometimes government receives more than what companies say they have paid. Most times they match. Sometimes companies pay more than they should pay or pay less. Most times they pay less. So all these are issues that come up in that, and then the figures and data are made public to us. We reconcile to the various last couple. How do we reconcile? If you paid more than you received, the two, we need to see the evidence to see where the error is. And at the end of the day, where variances are unreconcilable, we report it as it is. But the good thing is that all the companies who participated, for instance, in the last industrial report, 69 companies, 74, but we reconcile 69 companies participated. And these companies, each and every one of them must sign off on the report that they publish. What we have is the final submission, and all the government agencies that participate, NMPC, NUPRC, NMDPRA, FRS, Office of Accountant General, Ministry of Finance, every Customs Service, the MASA, every agency that either receive or take custody of extractive industry funds will be covered by that report with relevance to their specific role. For customs, you know what the role of customs. Then free on board, when we are exporting, you have to check. So we have all this information and we document them. And when the reports are ready, the multi-stakeholders group that are constituted in our board, we have 15-member board chaired by the secretary to the government or the federation. And then we have industry representatives, those who represent all the major oil companies sit on the board. NMPC is on the board. FRS is on the board. I sit on the board as the secretary. And when all these, including representatives of civil society, elected by the civil society. So it's a very 6 geopolitical zones, has a 1 member each. We all sit together and we meet once the report is ready, review every process followed, and then we sign off the report. Everyone signs the report. That's why nobody contests 90 report, because it's empirical, it's agencies and companies driven and civil society owned. So that's the process. So by the time we have that report, we release it publicly. Then after the release of the report, the kind of meeting that you saw me at the Senate will now follow.
Now, specifically, do the oil industries, the oil companies drilling, producing oil, do they sign off this? The oil companies?
Do
they sign off this?
Yeah,
your
they
report?
do. Yes, they have what we call, we deal with them on the platform of OPTS, Oil Producing Trade Section of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce. All the major oil companies are members. So it's this OPTS that says they are represented. When we get the report, we take it to OPTS. OPTS is now their meeting where they will sit and look at what the report
says. Now,
because
let me tell you why I asked this question.
Yeah.
In other words, if I come to NATE, I can get figures on Nigeria's oil production.
Brilliant. Yeah, of course. Yes, you can.
Now, why is it within our own industry in the media that you cannot put your fingers on the volume of oil Nigeria produces?
Well, neither here nor there. in the sense of when you ask me what was produced, you understand, on the basis of facts that are supplied by companies and verified by government agencies and validated by NETI, I'll give you. But if you're now talking of production, you're talking of production from the wellheads that contains oil, gas, impurities, and everything. So measurement of what was produced from the well station to the flow station to the terminal is still a different ballgame, complete ballgame. And don't forget, I've told you of the various funding arrangement that what we are referring will be probably the total production.
Final figure.
Yeah, we're also part of that debate that we needed to be very empirically sure of total production. I do agree that it's neither here nor there. We cannot say to be fully empirical in terms of when you are looking at total. But when you are looking at valid information provided for us, we are correct. But we still have a chance. We are still part of those saying that Nigeria needs to have a mechanism to measure accurately. To measure, don't forget that companies are here for business. They are not here for they are businessmen. They are professionals.
They're not on charity.
Yes, they're not on charity. So if you are now depending on them to declare, yes, we trust that they will declare accurately. But is there any independent technology by Nigeria to measure what it produces? That's where NETI has recommended that there should be a metering technology introduced, more than what the companies are using. The companies are using that, but is there any way our own system can interrogate what they are using? We don't have, and we need to have. So that's the point. That's where I partially agree with you that there is still some level of doubt in the minds of Nigerians that we may not be sure exactly what to produce. But on the total declared production, which is basis of our report, we are correct. But are we sure that what is being declared as produced is exactly what was produced? I'm not quite sure that we can vouch for that because we still lack that technology to measure accurately what to produce. NUPLC is working on it because we recommended. NNPC is working on it. We recommended. But we need to get to a level where what we saw in Saudi Arabia. I went there and I went to Saudi Aramco. At their control room, you can track to last pint what oil is produced and where it is heading to the point of discharge. Then they have that figure. We don't have that technology yet. And so it is in other countries. And then look at, like you're also saying, look at the challenges of oil theft.
I was coming there.
So the leakages are not also properly accounted. So when you ask me if that represents the total production, honestly, it's difficult to say yes.
Now, in this your report, really, I was coming to that issue. Does that report take account of oil theft?
Oh, yes.
And what recommendations is NETI making to tackle that challenge?
We have our recommendations, and I'll be able to offer you a copy of this report. It's also available on our website. One of the recommendations we made for tackling oil theft, the one you can know, is the first of all is to address the concerns of the host communities. The host communities don't believe they are stealing. They think we are the ones actually stealing from them. They say the oil is in their ancestral land, and they are taking what belongs to them. So who is stealing from who? That's their mentality. And they say, okay, if you don't want us to be seen to be stealing, provide us roads, give us water, give us access to health, access to education, make our host communities look like Abuja. Then you won't see any of it. Give our children a job. Transform this environment, because when you go to those host communities, they're in very pitiable condition. So you don't even have the moral justification to be asking them what is wrong with what they are doing, because the whole environment is messed up. There's most of them live in post-fallow, and the host communities are in their need of help. So to address this issue, let the host communities feel part of the impact of the resources that are within their vicinity. If they, so that they can, when they are part owner, when they are feeling the impact positively, access to road, water, electricity, employment, they won't tamper with the oil. And then, you know, like I went to a city in Stavanger, called Stavanger in Norway. That's the oil city in Norway, 2.5 hours from Oslo by air. If you get to that city, which should be like our own oil city like Port Harcourt, there's nobody in that city that will be looking to steal anything because the city is transformed. Everything is automated, well developed, more than any other part of Norway. So, and you go to Qatar, you go to Bahrain, you go to Malta, or you go to the Kingdom of Kuwait or UAE. You see where the people feel the resources of their impact. And that's why crime is low in those areas, because oil theft is a crime. It's criminal activity. But when there is a lot of poverty, inadequacy, misery and suffering, people are bound to begin to do things that challenge normal sense of morality. So one area is to address the concerns of host communities. The other area is also to, which I recommended, I spoke to the Senate because I served in the Presidential Committee on Oil Theft set up by the last administration. And we did a very, very constructive report which we presented to the government. The current National Security Advisor is doing a lot. We have seen it in our report. I'm not praising him because it's reflecting in our report because the report we did shows that oil theft has dropped by 73%. It's in that report. So, and we're imagining that this didn't just happen without some. I think there's more collaboration now between the security agencies, and there's a policy, a kind of political will to really deal with the problem. So you need to have that political will to deal with the problem, address the concerns of host communities. Then the oil workers that are laid off anyhow, casualized, should stop. Because some of these boys that are well trained in connecting pipelines
go back,
stealing from the pipeline.
For them.
Yes, it's some people, the same boys that are used to lay the pipelines, which is very highly automated, to go and bust the pipeline and drill oil. It requires skill and technology. So those boys that are used for drilling and that are laid off, they are already well skilled. When you lay them off, they don't have anything to do. Oil bunkers hire them to bust pipelines. So giving those kind of trained manpower jobs is very important. Then there need to be more collaboration between security agencies, because too much security is no security. You have army, you have navy, you have air force, you have police, you have national NSDC, civil defense. And they are all there, fine, but there should be collaboration and teamwork in terms of exchange of information, not any of them working across purposes. But more importantly, is to address the concerns of those host communities. I can't repeat that enough. Because if the host communities take ownership of what is on there, they will help to protect those environments.
And Dr. Orji, I want to believe that these recommendations are contained in your report.
Yeah, they are.
I also want to believe that the Senate now has copies of these recommendations and you have interfaced with them. Permit me to ask you, what is the attitude of the legislators to this kind of recommendation? Because they will push it if we are going to solve these problems.
I must commend the chairman, House Senate Committee on Public Accounts for first of all initiating the interaction I had with them in the Senate a few years past. Because they invited us, they studied the report, and they asked very informed, and all members of that committee. But the next is on implementation. And now that they have heard from me and from Naiti, they have read the report, they are now considering a public hearing. And that public hearing will require bringing together the government, the stakeholders in the industry, including the civil society, including the companies and themselves, to bring out those issues we have recommended. It's my belief that after that very introduction, some action will be taken, because implementation of our report will go a long way.
Let me just, you and I, let's look at it together.
Yeah.
Who should take responsibility for addressing the concerns and needs of these host communities? Is it not the government? Must it be the companies that are doing business?
It's multi-stakeholders driven. Everybody has a role, including the host communities themselves. Because if you listen to government and government tells you the efforts they have made, then you begin to wonder, were those opportunities created by government were utilized? In the Niger Delta, there's NDDC, Niger Delta Development Commission, there's Ministry of Niger Delta. There is also Amnesty Program. The PIA has provided for host community fund there. Now, if these efforts are channeled and properly managed transparently, most of those concerns would have been well addressed. But your guess is as good as mine. Whether those, so that's the role. Government will tell you this is what we have done. Now, the host communities themselves, their leaders that interface with these agencies, are they accountable to their own people? Because host communities are led by people. Do they get what the opportunities that come? Do they maximize them? That's another area. Then, on the part of government, when you set up an institution, you also have a responsibility to also make sure those institutions deliver on their mandate. Are the monitoring mechanism in place to make sure that then the companies will tell you, oh, we are remitting the amount required of us to NDDCs. We are not responsible for providing, but the companies too can't completely claim to wash their hands off. There are corporate that they have to do. If you do them, you do them with passion. Because we went to one of the extractive companies, and I saw the relationship with them and their host community. Because the day we were coming, the community came out in large numbers. We were even afraid when we were going to welcome us. But they were very happy we were coming, because I now saw that same company has done a lot for the community. They constructed the access road, they built a school, they built a hospital, in fact, the one we went to commission was a well laid out football pitch they built for the youths in the school. And within that company, they're also employing a lot of their. So the community saw themselves a part owner of that, and they told us that they don't normally have any
problems with the community.
No, they don't have any problem of insecurity and everything. And we saw it. So the companies need to do more in taking some kind of deepening their engagement with the communities. Then, above all, there must be communication between government, state, local government, and the communities. Because sometimes communities will need, so projects are started in communities that are not necessarily what they need at that time. So there's a lot that needs to happen. And that's why we, in Haiti, highlight all these things in our report, and we seek for audience with relevant government.
Well, I'm conversing with the Executive Secretary of Nigeria's Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, and listen to the core name, Extractive Industries. This conversation has been mostly about oil and gas and host communities, but extractive industries also include other minerals under the soil. We'll come to that aspect shortly. Just take a break and return. Please stay with us. Well, you're welcome back. I'm still in the studio with Dr. Ogbonnaya, the Executive Secretary of Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. Now, before we went on that break, I re-emphasized the name of this organization, Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, which means it's not just oil and gas. It also includes solid minerals. They're supposed to track the transparency of the operations in the solid minerals sector. Before I ask Dr. Ogbonnaya the next question, I'm going to roll a very short tape from the National Assembly. If you watch it briefly, I continue with them.
Those involved in this illegal mining, they use choppers. They procure arms exactly the same way as our military were doing in the South. They give them arms. They use choppers to come and cut away the gold. And they take them out of this country and make billions of US dollars. And the federal government is not doing what it should be doing. I took this letter to the former president when I was national chairman of APC. And I said, call the general to give you more brief. In fact, what is happening or what subsequently happened in that part of the country was exactly what the general told me was going to happen. Because these guys have been weaponized by the illegal big men who deploy them, secure territories, and the weapon is meant to protect the Chinese and other foreigners who they actually employ to carry out the mining. And on occasion, they use the same weapon to carry out banditry, kidnapping, and all of the terrible things that are going on.
Thank you. Dr. Orji, in this clip, you may have heard, and I repeat, let me tell you, Mr. Adams Oshiomhole, former governor of Edo State, saying that illegal mining is being driven by retired generals. He said that on the floor of the Senate. The retired generals have taken him on since then, and he has refused to recant. The point I'm taking from there is that there seems to be a bazaar of illegality, illegal mining in Nigeria's solid mineral sector. Before this, all of us recall the mass death in Zamfara State over water poisoning from illegal gold mining. Former President Muhammadu Buhari did admit that illegal mining was stoking insecurity, to the point that illegal miners were flying solid minerals out of Nigeria. He in fact banned flights over Zamfara. Now, we are tracking developments in that sector. How healthy, what is the health of Nigeria's solid mineral sector?
Well, thank you very much. With due respect to
Adams Oshiomhole,
that is his view, and he's entitled to it. I'm not.
You're not a politician.
I'm not a politician, and I don't join issues with the political class. They are our guys. So I am focused on my job, and we speak on the basis of data from Haiti and on the limits of our mandate. From our report, what we find is that is there illegal mining going on in the sector? Yes. Is it very dominant in the sector? Yes. Is it leading to leakages in revenue? Yes. Is it contributing to insecurity in the sector? Maybe. I am not a security expert to establish that. But we know from our reports that our report doesn't cover security. So I can't comment on that. But I know that illegal mining is constantly reported in our report, and from our disclosures, we lose a lot of revenue through illegal mining. The potentials of that sector are huge. The revenue we get from that sector clearly
don't represent
the potential of that sector. In 2021, Nigeria received only 193.59 billion naira in the sector. In 2022, we received 345.41 billion naira in that sector. This is a sector that should be reeling out revenue in dollars. In 2023, we received total payments, total government revenue received from that sector was $401.87 billion. In all of this, you find out that major revenue streams there are just taxes and then fees from licensing fees, not much. And if you look at the figure in terms of revenue we have collected from that sector, from 2007 to today, that sector has only yielded 1.56 trillion naira in between 2007 and 2023, a period of over 10 years. So a sector like that cannot be said to be doing well. This money is a far cry for what could be realized from that sector. Now, in 2021, the whole sector contribution to our GDP was less than 1%, 0.63%. And in 2022, the whole contribution of that sector to our GDP in 2022 was 0.83%, still less than 1%. The last report we did, the solid mineral sector contributed 0.75% in 2023. And then when I read out this data in facts and figures, let them bear the Senate. The senators were very disappointed and angry. And they said whether NIT was actually reporting facts and whether we were collaborating with stakeholders in the sector. I said, yes, we were. They said, no, the activities they see in the sector do not match these figures. I said, I agree. But those activities, is there any way to see that the activities represent money that goes into government coffers? There can be activity, but those activities, are they accounted for? That's where I agree with you. There's illegal mining. But who is perpetuating it and who is responsible? That's not, NIT has not a position to identify. Those are security matters that we can't delve into. And political leaders can make their own informed decisions and pronouncements. We are not joining those issues with them. But our facts agree that the potential of that sector are far undermined and not yielding dividends. So we explained that in our work, we collaborate with the ministry, we collaborate with all the stakeholders in the sector, including miners. But there are fundamental reform problems that need to happen in the oil, in the solid mineral sector. If you want the solid minerals sector to really perform optimally, one is legislation. The 2007 Minerals Act is old, archaic, and should be reviewed and updated to match with the current digital age. Investors need an environment where they can come in and go out. They can bring in capital, invest, reap their profits, and go without obstruction. They also need a free entry and a free exit where, for instance, the mining licenses are issued in Abuja. You will arrive in the state where the mining activities take place. You go to the ministry, the land in the state is vested in the hand of the state governor, who will ask you where you have a mining license. Okay, you are welcome. Go and mine now. Where is your land? You say, the land is under me. I'm not aware of what the license you have. So there is that dichotomy. Then you get to the host community. There is another land with the local government is another convoluted structure. How do we harmonize this law in such a way that states, local government, and federal all have a stake in the whole process? So that once you are issued a mining license, some of these obstacles are already laid back. You go straight into, maybe if you are engaging with the communities under community development agreement. No wants to go through all these challenges because time is money. An investment in the solid mineral sector requires a lot of time for you to begin to reap the benefits. So legal reforms are required. I don't know how that can be done. These experts can look at it. We in NIT have expressed a recommendation, but we stopped there. We allowed the industry experts to look at it. But what we know is that the way the legal structure is contained is a major hindrance. The other one is specifically on fiscal regime. The current royalty rates in the sector is decimally too low. And it was reviewed recently, but it still needs to be upwardly reviewed. In the oil and gas industry, the PIA is very specific. It has a very optimal competitive legal fiscal regime that determines who gets what and how on the basis of revenue. Then the third one is that if you check the solid mineral sector, we've highlighted this. There is no standing company that is driving investment in the sector, whether it's publicly owned or privately owned. Like you go to the oil and gas industry, you have the NNPC. When you want to invest in Nigeria, in the oil and gas, you can't do so without talking to NNPC in one way or the other. You go to the gas industry, you have NLNG. They are there. In the oil and in the solid mineral, no. The Nigerian Mining Corporation was collapsed, and no, there's no replacement. You need such a company. It's like now the sector is like a captain, a football team without a captain. The ministry should be restricted to policy guidance and direction. The ministry cannot be the regulator. They can also not serve as the driver of investment, but they can channel, they can guide the investment decisions with policy. So these are the issues we are looking at. When reform is initiated in the solid mineral sector, we will know, and Nigerians will be able, experts in waiting for that opportunity will come and make contribution. So we recommended an executive bill right from the president, initiated by the ministry, simply similar to the petroleum industry. But the challenge we have with the PIA, which I highlighted yesterday, was that when PIA was passed, it recommended that there should be a national strategic plan to guide implementation. There is none. I was in the presidential committee to draft the strategic plan. We started meeting before the new administration, but we didn't conclude our assignment and we didn't produce any report. So if we have a new legislation in the solid mineral sector, it should be backed up with a plan, because that plan will now specify regulations that need to be drafted from the law, because a law alone is not enough. When you pass a law, you now draft regulations.
That will guide implementation.
Yes, guide implementation. There should be a regulation of fiscal regime, regulation on licensing, regulation on even policy. There are a lot of regulations that will guide each particular aspect. So a strategic plan to guide any new law, as important as that has to do with investment, needs to be in place. You can't implement the PIA without. That's our view. Those who disagree will say, oh, you can't, the implementation will not be able to, you won't be able to track and measure and track progress. So we have made comprehensive recommendations on how the solid mineral sector can be liberalized. For us now, it's regimented. The states, if a state government wants to invest, it's not very easy. Local government wants to invest, it's not, individuals want to invest, it's not very easy. And yet, the amount of potential in terms of revenue available in the solid mineral sector is enormous. Every nook and cranny of our Nigerian communities and local governments and states across the country have one form of solid minerals or not, or the other. And there is abundance, that's abundance everywhere. But now, these revenues I'm talking to you is just revenues that we are getting from Dangote.
That trickle in.
Dangote from limestone, quarrying, limestone, and gravel. That's all. We're not talking of copper, we're not talking of diamond, we're not talking of gold, and so on. So a lot needs to happen. The minister has the zeal, has the passion. We had meetings with him. He needs support. The ministry needs funding, and at least to be able to push for this reform to commence. But stakeholders in the industry should not just lay back and be complain. We have
now, Dr. Stakeholders, in the course of this conversation, you made an analogy that if you enter the oil sector, there is a process already established. If you get a license to go into the solid mineral sector, you get to the states, they say, okay, you have your license now, go and mine. The land belongs to us. You go to local government, you say, go and mine now. You need the collaboration of the states and local governments. I became worried at that point. And I said, if I get my license from the federal government to mine oil, because oil is mining.
Yeah, that's true.
To mine oil, I'm allocated my, what do they call it? My block. Yeah. I move in and I mine. I don't get bogged down by state government. I don't get bogged down by local government, because understanding between me, a contract between me and the federal government. Why will I be bogged down when it comes to license to mine gold?
Well, the structure of the two extractives are different. In the oil, you have upstream.
Let me interrupt you.
Yeah.
Both are owned by the federal government, because they are minerals under the ground.
Yeah. But the participation of various arms of government on each of them are different. Like I'm just trying to have oil in the upstream, you have downstream, you have midstream. Every activity about mining of solid mineral is on the surface. So, which conflicts with the opportunities for daily farming by the
host communities.
And then
Dr. Orji, I must phrase this, your argument, your presentation here. Yes. Because for more than 30 years, those in the oil industry, communities in the oil industry, have also raised the same concerns as may be raised by those hosting solid minerals.
Let me say
let me
say the consciousness about oil and gas is not as it is in the solid minerals. Remember, the solid minerals was the first mining that was started in Nigeria before the discovery of oil. So what the question you should be asking, how was it done that time?
Or how did these solid minerals go down?
Yes, and then
to the point that it becomes contentious, reviving it.
Your concern is as good as mine. These are issues that will define and shape the reform that we're talking about. It's not something me and you can stay here and fashion out. There are experts in this area. What we need to know, and we believe, and we are sure, is that something is wrong with the solid mineral sector. We're also sure that there are a lot of potentials that are completely overlooked and abandoned. We're equally sure that that sector needs help. How that help can come, how it can work, these are issues of policymakers and industry experts, and they are available in Nigeria, and they are ready to help. We need this discussion to start. And the Solid Minerals Ministry are singing a low voice. We need people to amplify their voice. If you go to that ministry, you will also know that they are passionate about what I'm saying. They have their own issues, but dealing with them over the years as we have done, I mean, they need support.
Okay, Dr. Orji, let us give them support this morning. At the opening of this conversation, you said the activities of NAITI will help transparency, will help make sure that monies that are earned go to where they ought to go, and people benefit from the resources of their nations. You gave me a lot of examples of poverty, insecurity, poor health, even amidst the financial plenty that ought to be coming from all these minerals, the Nigerian experience. How well have the activities of NAITI been helping to drive the lower Nigerian persons benefiting from the quantum of resources, financial resources accruing from our mineral sector?
Thank you very much. Our impacts are both qualitative and quantitative, and some are also imaginary. You see it, but you can hardly. It takes time to feel it. Let me start with when we started. By the time we started, 19 started in 2000, hardly would you be discussing issue of oil and gas line because the whole industry was opaque. People didn't know who was doing what in the industry, no information. The few people that had that information put it to themselves to their chest, and oil was an elephant. That oil and gas, even believing that working there is an opportunity. A lot of people, including at our age, may not have seen crude oil that unrefined. What you see is PMS, a raw crude oil. Many Nigerians have not seen them. So it is to the extent that information in that sector was hidden. But today, through the work of NATI, information on oil and gas industry is everywhere and data. You visit our website. So if you just write NATI on your phone, you will see our website. It will pop up immediately. And then you now see the amount of information we have provided. It is because of that information that people have now used that information to be promoting public debate ahead, including the media, like what we are discussing now. Now we know how much we earned from oil in 2021, $23.04 million. Nigeria earned before such information is hidden. We know that every Nigerian can know that we earned $35.78 billion in oil and gas last year in 2022, 2021, 23.04 billion, and 2023, 30.86 billion, and so on and so forth. We can also give you figure on what transpired in the sector between 2014 and 2023, who earned what, and who is. We can also tell you how much quantity of crude that were produced. In fact, we have figure of how much we have earned from oil from 1999 to date. As sat today, between 1999, when we embraced democracy, and Nigeria joined EITI, $831.14 billion represent the total amount of money.
And from oil
sector, oil and gas sector. That is, with this data, you can ask question. What did you use the money for? You can ask a informed question, and through that discussion, change and reforms can happen. That's why I tell you that some of our impacts are in the area of making data and information available, which is very, very important for citizens' engagement, education, and civic engagement. The second thing we can know is that we talked about petroleum industry bill. It was NATI's report that raised the alarm that the only law in the sector was the Petroleum Act of 1959, enacted 1 year before Nigerian independence. NATI raised the alarm in our report that we need a new law that is current and dynamic. Although the PIA lasted 18 years in the National Assembly, they will now have a law. The credit of raising that issue is that of NATI. NATI, you saw us in the National Assembly. There are so many MOUs and agreements that oil companies entered into with our governments and various agencies that sometimes we forget to renew them. We forget to update them. All of those, we track them, and all of them are up to date. There are also revenues we have recovered through our reports. Last report we published, we announced that $6.01 billion were outstanding to be paid by companies in terms of taxes, various taxes, and these revenues we have written to FIRS to go and collect them. NUPRC, the regulator, are also the ones to collect rents, collect royalty. We have also identified their portion of that money, in addition to another 66 billion naira. These are impacts, revenue generation, domestic resource mobilization. We have also told you of how NATI's reports informs investment decisions. When people abroad, all over the world, when you sleep in a hotel, if you want to make a good hotel, you go online and see their rating. Most of these things don't matter much in Nigeria. That's why people try to improve efficiency. You go and see how the hotel, the comments of those. When people want to come to make investment, they're unknown to our people. They go to 90 website. They go to NRG, Natural Resource Governance Index. First of all, they find out if your country is a member of Global EITI. If it is, what is the report of the local EITI saying about the sector? To make investment report. In our last validation, which is the global assessment, we scored 72 over 100, recording highest on credibility of data. Those are credits that. So the 90 report, as the chief executive of Signature TV remarked when we were discussing with him during the courtesy call to my organization, he was asking how we were able to manage our relationship with government, the civil society, and then the industry, and then we still have our. It's because of credibility of data. When we present facts to government, they don't argue with us. They work with it. They are happy. You don't go to government without your facts. We present facts in forms of advice. Government listens. So government makes use of our report for informed decision and national. And finally,
Dr. Orji, I would like to conclude, please, because there's something you raised I want you to also tie together. These unpaid taxes, unpaid revenues you've identified in your reports, how do you make sure that indeed those agencies recover those monies?
No, we work with them. It's in their interest to recover them. We work with them because when they collect the money, they collect percentage of collection. We collect nothing. You understand? They are entitled to 4% allowed by them by law to collect. We're entitled to nothing. So we're working with them. The FIRS is a member of our board. NNPC is a member of our board. So they will work with them. We are closely working together. We disagree and agree. When our facts are laid bare, we ask them dispute the facts. If they are not, then put us right. Most times we agree. If we are, before our reports are put, we do a lot of exchange of information to make sure that the facts are correct. So we need their cooperation. We work together. We work together. They are working on it, and they may not be as fast as we expect, but they are our partners.
And seeing the oil companies sign off to this, they're also willing to pay.
Yes. When I'm owing you and you are not asking me to pay, what should I be so? What's my interest in trying to pay you? You should come to ask for your money. If you don't, I will invest the money somewhere. When you are ready, I could even pay you for the profit I've made. So if you sleep on your right, there's nothing I can do. If the debtor has the responsibility to hold the money, as long as the creditor is not interested to collect his money. But if you are owing me and I give you sleepless night, you pay me and you have your peace. So, and then there should also be the sanction component of it, because in other jurisdictions, if you owe tax, it's a big offense. So, tied to the impact, we also exchange regular information with anti-corruption agencies and relevant security agencies to track money laundering through illegal mining, to track terrorism financing, to track. There are so many information and data that we share, and so the impact of our organization is huge, very huge.
Huge, very huge, and this conversation has been huge, very huge. I hope that you followed us all through our conversation this morning. I've been speaking with Dr. Ogbonnaya, the Executive Secretary of Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. I think it's in our collective interest to follow their activities, really, because there's so much I've learned this morning, and I hope you have also benefited. On your behalf, let me thank Dr. Orji for coming to the program.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I thank the management and the team of Signature TV for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, and my name is Mwabozo Njoku. Good morning.